Taoiseach, if you believed the ads where the government had about the cost of living and that you were entitled to various supports from the government, you would really think there was a lot of support for people who need exceptional needs payments, who are really, really struggling with the cost of living crisis. And I have to say, my clinic was absolutely overrun in the days coming up to Christmas with people in desperate situations, and it has got worse in the new year, where people are really seriously struggling. Money for food, money to pay heating bills, prepaid power, where people are paying up to €10 a day for gas and so on. They just can't afford it. I have people crying in my clinic. Now, one of the things that is an obstacle to people getting support is there's no community welfare officer anymore that you can go down and see. I put in a PQ about this where I was told there was a hotline, you can make appointments. It's just not true. You can't see a community welfare officer for love nor money at the moment, and desperate people are finding it impossible to access supports that they badly need.
Thanks very much, Deputies, for your contributions. Just at the outset, I want to say that the reports of the attack in Ashtown near the Talca River are very disturbing. And while I can't comment on the specifics of the case, I do condemn unreservedly any incident or threat of violence against vulnerable people in our society, particularly those from a migrant background. People have the right to protest, but they don't have the right to do it in a way that causes others to fear for their safety or in ways that threaten public order. I have sought a report from the Gardaí on this, and I've received the report, haven't had a chance to read it yet, but they are continuing to investigate the incident, and I'm sure deputies will appreciate that I can't comment further on an open investigation. While the number of people rough sleeping is down to around 91 people in the Dublin region now, the upward trend of people accessing emergency accommodation in recent months is of serious concern to government. We have introduced a no-fault eviction ban, a new acquisitions programme for vulnerable households, emergency leasing of extra units, increased HAP discretion rates, and we're implementing the largest social housing programme in the history of the state. We don't have the numbers in yet, but we think that the number of new social homes provided last year will be the highest since 1975. And I know in the case of the men who were victims of this attack, that they have been offered shelter, and one is in hospital and others are in contact with services. They were offered shelter before, but for their own reasons they want to be able to stay together, and that has complicated factors a bit. A couple of deputies mentioned the community welfare service, and I hear what deputies are saying in terms of the difficulties that their constituents are having in accessing the community welfare officers. So I'll certainly raise that with Minister Humphreys in the coming days. In relation to the referendum on gender equality and on the family, I'd anticipate bringing the proposed wording, and I welcome the fact that there are options, but we hope to bring the proposed wording to Cabinet before the end of this quarter. The Electoral Commission will be established next week, and I think I'm correct in saying the Electoral Commission is now the Referendum Commission, so we don't have to go through that complicated process of establishing a Referendum Commission every time we have a referendum. I can't promise that we'll have the referendums this year, but I certainly would like to have them done this year, and we'll have a better idea on that in the next few weeks. Just on the homicide reviews, I'm going to check with Minister Harris about the timeline on that. In relation to domestic sexual and gender-based violence in general, we've launched a new strategy to combat that form of violence. It's a 5-year programme of reform aimed at achieving a society that doesn't accept DSGBV or attitudes which underpin it. The strategy and the accompanying implementation plan contains over 140 detailed actions for implementation. There'll be strong political oversight of implementation through the Cabinet Committee on Social Affairs and Public Services, which I chair. And education and awareness raising are also a big part of the government's fight against this form of violence, and we're working on national campaigns to raise awareness, including on the meaning of consent. Some of the main actions include doubling the number of refuge spaces available in Ireland, and I note Deputy Smith's advocacy in relation to Cavan in particular when it comes to providing refuge spaces there. Also, national sexual violence and national domestic violence prevalence studies, which will be conducted at 5-year intervals. New legislation to provide for the introduction of a specific offence of non-fatal strangulation and a specific offence of stalking. the training of frontline workers to identify domestic violence and refer victims and survivors to the appropriate services, improving prosecutions of breaches of any and all DSGBV civil orders provided for in domestic violence and family law legislation. The government is also continuing to drive forward with the implementation of supporting a victim's journey, and we're determined that when victims of crime come forward, they'll be safe in the knowledge that they will be helped, informed and treated with respect and dignity at every stage of their journey through the justice system. We've also focused on strengthening legislation, including the Criminal Justice Miscellaneous Provisions Bill. This wide-ranging bill will increase the maximum sentence for assault causing harm from 5 years to 10. In relation to the geographical provision of refuge spaces, we acknowledge the need for a significant increase in the provision of spaces, and we're committed to achieving this so that every person who needs a refuge space will have access to one. The initial phase of work, we expect to have provided 24 more spaces in Wexford, Dundalk and Navan by next year. And then there'll be a further 98 units in identified locations in 2025, along with a further 19 additional and upgraded units by the end of the strategy period. There are also plans for 32 safe home units to have them operational presently, with plans to expand the numbers to 55 before the end of 2023.